Hey everyone, George Christie here again with another episode of the Win Insider Series. It's an opportunity to get to meet some of the people in our industry, learn a little bit more about what they do, and hopefully get to know them a little bit better on a personal level. And today I'm super excited. We have Lauren Fremont. Lauren is the Executive Director for Winegrowers of Dry Creek Valley. Lauren and I had a chance to work together. I was on the board with Lauren for the first, I guess, 15 months or 16 months or
so, a little more
of you being in that position. So we know each other, but I'm going to get to know her a little bit better along with all of you. So Lauren, welcome, and thanks for being with the Insider Series today.
Thank you for having me, George. I'm so excited to see you again.
I know. Full disclosure, we would have these conversations literally at this time every week during the period that I was president. So it's kind of a little bit of a reunion for us. Lauren, let's just get into it. Talk a little bit about your current role as the Executive Director of Winegrowers, and tell the audience a little bit about what you do in that role.
Sure. It's myself who runs the organization, along with we have somebody named Amanda who does all the marketing and PR. But it's really a team, and we collaborate on a lot of things. The overarching mission for us is always to think like in a holistic way of how we can make sure we continue to have Dry Creek Valley as a brand. Although, of course, all the wineries and growers are all very different and are across the range, trying to find this common ground and to be able to continue to bring awareness to the area, new opportunities, new collaborations, and also then the part that is more along the policies and government piece of, protecting the ag and making sure we take care of the land and anything we can do to be a part of that and have our community behind that effort.
And tell us again, how long have you been in this?
So I started 2 years ago. And actually this summer, I think it was like August 17th or something like that.
Yeah.
And the day-to-day really, obviously there's like the membership side of it. We have about just a little over 60 members. And then we have a little over 100 growers. So a lot of it is just like that relationship with them, helping them from things as simple as, we need a new sign because our sign got stolen, whatever it might be, to something trying to help potentially put their information about grapes they're trying to sell. Wineries, we do a lot of events with them, whether it's collaborations with other organizations or our annual event called Passport that's at the end of April, which is really kind of an ongoing effort. Like we end it and we start working on the next year. So it's kind of an interesting organization because it's almost a startup and my own business, but it's not mine.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I think that one of the biggest challenges for an executive director in your kind of role is that you have, as you mentioned, like first of all, you got wineries and growers, right? So they have different needs or things that they're looking for from the organization. And then just on the winery side, you've got some pretty large guys out there, and you've got some very small guys, and what they're looking for from the organization can be different. So do you find that challenging?
I do, but I think it's also this great opportunity to find different scenarios that I'm able to kind of present to everybody, and it won't always fit the right bill, but we try to be as fair as possible. With those kind of opportunities. For example, we, started doing this work with Google headquarters once a quarter to pour at their property in San Francisco. And it was really, it's one of those things like we do a lottery now. You're a small winery, you're a big winery, you can be a part of it. So some of it is just like happens very organically. There'll always be, discussions from one grower, what they need versus another grower, whatnot. And then it's kind of figuring out with our own bandwidth, both of time and actual financial resources, where do we put our energy? And where I always think back to the mission, but also back to the, what's the impact going to be? And is it even something that's realistic to be able to do?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, like you said, we're I mean, I say this a lot, that we're never going to make or break people's brands or businesses. But if we're able to think outside the box a lot of time and be able to come up with these, opportunities, and also just be the voice for the Valley, really, at the end of the day, which is such an honor. Amanda and I have this opportunity to be able to share out what makes this area so special. And that's a lot of, it's something that the wineries and the growers just don't have time for also on just this day-to-day basis. So
Yeah.
I think it's just a little bit like you'll never make everybody happy, but I think the listening part and the being available and the trusting part is way more valuable of creating this community than, potentially checking the boxes off for everyone. And I think our members, for the most part, I will say, are just lovely humans. And we're just so grateful for them being a part of this. And it's not, they're reasonable as well. We're reasonable to them. And it's like a very much a two-way street and a conversation versus like, what are you going to do for me?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you've done a really good job, getting to know the membership, because I think that's one of the hardest things for someone in your role is to get a sense for all the different personalities out there and sort of how they interact. And how did you do that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, I had a chance for about 4 years to work with I worked in nonprofit at Boston Ballet, which is very different, the arts, than the wine world, of course. But our success in that world was our donors and, people that were donating a lot of funding, to this, to make sure that Boston Ballet was thriving. And that's a lot of personalities to always deal with. So I feel like I've had that background also of just, I've realized that so much of it, honestly, is listening and then building this trust and finding a connection, right? A lot of it is almost like taking a step back and being like, okay, talk to me. Like, we're just going to take it down a notch. I'm not going to solve everything, but like, let's get to know each other. And I mean, one of my favorite things about meeting new people is like finding that nugget of connection, to be able to have something with them where even though we might come from very different backgrounds, I'm not day to day tending to the vines, those kind of things. We can still have commonalities. I also have to say that, this, but the reason I moved here was because my parents decided to retire here and they live in Direct Valley and their whole heart is there. And, they're very small growers, but I feel even using that bit of nugget that I didn't just come from out of nowhere.
Right.
And that my heart is here also because it's my family. And so much of Dry Creek Valley is about family. I definitely use that piece a lot to just like, be able to have that moment with all those individuals when we were trying to rebuild, a genuine sense of community where people felt like they were proud of being part of this organization.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So I'm super curious about what you did with the Boston Ballet. So were you in charge of or responsible for sponsorship or donations? I mean, was that your job?
So my role was director of events and experiences. So the major event that we had was this huge gala every year. It had to raise a little over, give or take on any year, anywhere from $3 to $5 million. And so it was a moment where beyond the donations that were happening throughout the year, which I was not a day-to-day part of, this was a moment for our donors and building out new donors and new opportunities and sponsors. So both on the individual side giving and then also the corporate side giving for people to purchase tables. So similar to, there was an auction component to it. So people would buy tables as their tickets essentially, usually 10 at a time or so. So it was building this relationship with these donors throughout the year, so that when it came time for me to ask the money to raise and then do the live auction, silent auction, buy the tables at all these different levels, they already felt great to be a part of this event. So, but it's quite, I mean, now it's just Amanda and I. This was like, an organization where we had like a chief of staff and HR.
Yeah. I would imagine trying to put together like even all the auction lots, right, were had to be outrageous. And it's just so the money you raised basically helped fund the ballet, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, it was a big piece of funding a large portion of it, whether it was salaries in general, it's
Yeah,
actual building, it could have gone, some of it went to, something that sounds as trivial but as important as costumes.
yeah,
There's a huge component in that world also of doctors, physical therapy, surgeries, so on and so forth for these dancers. And it's always kind of finding this nugget with donors of, whether again it's a sponsor for an organization or whatnot, is back to like what's the connection and like why would they want to be a part of this? Like
right.
what is the piece, that is makes sense for them for their own like soul if it's an individual or for
Yeah,
a business if it's an organization. Like what makes I think part of that is just being flexible in like what they're giving back to you and vice versa.
yeah.
Uh,
You must have dealt with some big personalities there,
oh yeah,
with some very wealthy people. I imagine just like
very wealthy
very
people.
accustomed to getting
Yeah,
exactly what they want and when
yeah.
they want it.
And the more you handhold, the
Yeah.
like kind of harder it is because they keep wanting that at the drop of a hat. They just want everything. So, but I will say it was actually not that scary to me because before that, for about a decade, I owned a wedding planning company that was mostly in the luxury market. And those clients, where it's their one big day and they're spending
Yeah,
hundreds of thousands of dollars, that's where the stress really is. So the
yeah, I
donors
can
to Boston
imagine.
Ballet were fine.
Oh,
And now these members are just a walk in the park.
that's so funny. Actually, yeah, I mean, I think any wedding planner of whatever level that they operate, you're dealing with someone who's throwing the biggest party of their life.
Yeah.
Everything needs to be absolutely perfect, and the stress level is 11, right?
Yeah.
And you have to keep calm and just do your thing. Did you like that? Did you like
I did.
the?
I loved it. I mean, it was like a great high. I mean, it's like you have to be a little wackadoo to be really into it, but it's so, however much you give into it, I feel like I found such a niche market in what I was doing. I could, like any business owner, you get to tweak it and build it exactly how you want it. You can't complain. You're the boss.
Hey, so you can complain, but nobody cares, right? Just
Yeah,
like
exactly.
so. Were you doing that, and then you decided to go off on your own? I mean, how do you wind up in the luxury category, wedding planning luxury category? Because I think if I remember, you were not just here in the United States, or you were like doing things in Europe as well. So
Yep.
like,
So
tell us about
yeah,
that.
so it was New York and Paris. I was actually born there. Both of my parents are there. I just have this like, even though I was little when we moved, so we did Paris, then Geneva for a little bit in Switzerland, and then moved to New York. It's just in my blood. And when I had this business for a few years, there was a young woman who came to New York to study who really wanted to be my intern. And I was just like, I have no desire to have an intern. I don't even know
Yeah,
what I'm doing. So I took her on, and she turned out to actually be one of the two who ended up buying my business once I sold it. But she was from France. And when the time came, I just suggested to her, I was like, how about we just do New York, Paris? She wanted to move back to Paris. And so we developed that piece and we became known as like, you know, those, that company that was basically doing the back and forth between New York and Paris, which was, just awesome and fun. And, I mean, at first I was just like, I just want somebody to pay for my flight to get to go there a few times
yeah,
and
yeah.
get to do what I love. So, but the real beginning of my story actually kind of goes almost full circle back to the wine industry because my work in New York started in fine dining. So mostly restaurant management, events. I worked for like Drew Naporin, who started Tribeca Grill and that whole collective
Yeah.
back when it was like at its height in the early 2000s. So I was, in that world of fine wine and amazing food, and then I worked for Thomas Keller for a little bit, and Danielle Boulud. So I was just around it all the time. So when I moved to California, decided to pick up after, having our second child and moved to Healdsburg to be closer to my parents with the kids, I wasn't even necessarily looking for wine at first, but
Yeah,
then I
yeah.
was like, what an amazing opportunity to be part of a brand new community where I literally know no one except for my parents.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. At least you have your parents here, which is cool. Hey, do you
Yeah.
watch The Bear?
Yes, of course. So good.
Are there things about that you go like, oh my God, I
I
remember this.
mean, it's so accurate.
Yeah,
It's like
it's so crazy.
so good. But yeah, I miss that world. It's like it's like a different family. I feel like I've lived a million lives, which maybe you have felt like that too. But
Yeah, definitely to a degree, I guess. It's, it's just, yeah, it's different worlds, right? So it's kind of weird when they sort of come together.
yeah,
So were you living in New York before you came to Healdsburg?
no, I lived in Boston for about four
Oh,
years,
sorry, you
and
were in
I was
Boston.
at Boston Ballet with yeah, I moved there. My husband was working there, so I
Okay.
decided to make the hard move that I think I had expired in New York City, and I had done it all, the highs, the most highs, and the low lows, and it was maybe time for me to go, and I needed to hustle in a different way. So,
Yeah.
and it felt right actually. I actually vividly remember there was the 4th of July. I moved in the following like just after New Year's, but that 4th of July, I remember being on a rooftop looking at the fireworks in New York City and just having this gut feeling like I hadn't even met my husband at that time. Actually, I met him a few weeks later. I was like, I think this is my last 4th of July in New York.
Wow.
I think this is it. But I'm a little weird witch like that too. So
You got like these intuitions
yes,
going. Did the people that bought the business, are they still in business? Are they still
they're
doing?
still in business.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
and so the New York, it's kind of a lovely romantic story because I sold it to my first employee in New York, who
Yeah,
literally was a young woman who like moved out of Texas like with nothing in her pocket and decided to make it in New York City. Very
yeah,
classic move, and here she is. And then Coralie, who was in Paris with me at the time, who I sold the other half to, she passed it on to her first employee.
oh, nice.
And by now they've like renamed it because it just made sense. I mean, the name originally was a nickname for me growing up. So, and I'm just so proud. I mean, how amazing is that? It's like those are my other
Yeah,
children. Like people go up to me when they changed the name and they texted me and they were like, "Are you so sad that they changed the name?" And I'm just like, "No, I'm like so proud that this
yeah.
just like lives on and they're doing it better than ever." That's just the greatest feeling I think as an employer and even an employee when you get to mentor somebody new. It's just wonderful.
No, I think that's cool. I mean, it's just neat to be something that you created up here that all these years later, it's even if it's a little, it's evolved, right, which it's supposed to be, but it's still going. And like, hey, I started that. That's just a cool feeling.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's great. Now you get married and you have kids at this point. Still in Boston.
Yeah, we're in Boston. COVID hits, and we're like, let's have back-to-back children because
Oh,
why not? We live across the street from Mass General, one of the best hospitals in the world. We have nothing better to do. We were one of those
yeah,
cliches.
yeah, COVID kids. That's awesome. So you said that's it. We like time to go. Like you just said.
Yeah, it was just, I mean, listen, not to worry, Winegrowers of Dry Creek. I'm here right now. I absolutely love it. My parents are here. Like, our life is here. I love this community. I'm always, you know, I'm always hungry and I'm always excited about what's next. I'm never scared of moving or starting new or anything like that. So, it was just, I think I always kind of had California in the back of my head, and between you and I and the audience, Boston was a hard move after New York, especially
Yeah,
COVID.
yeah,
It was just a little harder to adjust to that particular city, and it just felt right. And why not? That's our kind of Brian, my husband, and I. That's our motto always for everything. Why not? Like
yeah.
it's just
Let's-
things. It's just whatever. Like we know the things that matter to us, and I just we literally picked up and left. I had just finished my maternity leave at Boston Ballet.
Yeah,
I came without a job. And I had a friend who's an event planner who said, you should look at this website called winejobs.com.
yeah.
And that's how I found Winegrowers.
So funny.
And yeah, it's been like truly my thought of being immersed in this community is exactly what's happened. And it's rare you can be in a position where you actually see some impact of your work,
Yeah.
you know, year to year. And that's very special. You can't say that about a lot of jobs anymore because often you are just a little piece of the puzzle and maybe hopefully a very important piece, but you don't necessarily see the fruits of your labor. And this job is just it's such direct impact.
Yeah. Well, it's also neat just because, you get to meet your job is to get to know these people that are part of your community. So,
Right.
if you had a job where you worked in even if it was an important job, but you're working with two or three, workmates in a small little office situation, and it's not the same, right? Because you're interacting with all these different people and all their different personalities, and you're spending a lot of time outside. I mean, there's so many things about the wine industry that I love that I imagine you do too, right? Because it's sometimes like I know we've had stories like, oh, you tell me a story about maybe somebody you met and you kind of met him out in the vineyard and you're like, it was I had my meeting in a vineyard today,
I know.
it's like a trip.
And every time you go see a member, they're like, "How about a splash of something?" And I'm like, "1 o'clock sounds great for some bubbles. I'll take it."
I know that's the craziest thing.
But it's yeah. So in that sense, it's great, and it's a little bit. I mean, of course, like any industry, the wine industry is in its own phase right now, and there's
Yeah.
ebbs and flows and ups and downs. But it's very there is this opportunity, I think, for this particular organization that's very playful also, and it has a lot of um, ways to think outside the box, and something that Amanda and I are trying to really constantly go after is what are these collaborations we can do with other established organizations and businesses that make sense for the brand of Dry Creek Valley, of
Yeah.
something that's already established, and that we're not reinventing this wheel because we only, again, have so much bandwidth and we're, a small nonprofit. Um, but that feels really relevant and, forward thinking and gets to just bring more personalities here and more people know about Dry Creek Valley and get to share a little bit of that magic with those individuals. So, I mean, we're kind of always in the mindset of nothing is too scary, really, or risky to find those opportunities. Some of it is just like finding the time to do it,
Yeah.
but it's always worth asking and trying to come up with that.
No, I think you've right from the get-go, I know you just sort of are not afraid for somebody to say no to you, which I think
Yeah.
is just it's a characteristic that I think if you're going to be successful in the kind of role that you're in, and I know you had to be like that with the ballet, and I imagine even when you were doing, in the wedding business, it's like you got to be able to take a no
Right.
and deal with that, So I think you've done a really, really, really good job with that. Um, but it hasn't all been super easy, right? So we had some fires recently in Dry Creek, which was pretty scary. And what were you thinking like when that first happened? I mean, what went through your
Well,
mind?
first of all, it was my first one. So
Yeah,
I haven't had fire experience yet,
yeah,
since I've only been here for 2 years. And we were pretty lucky the 2 years that we were been here because we haven't had anything. And there was actually no drought all of a sudden, things were going well.
yeah,
And so, but certainly in talking to our members and friends and people that have been here, I mean, you hear these stories and people have like full post-traumatic, experiences when they hear fire. Um, so I think, I mean, we were actually driving back from a friend's home in Tahoe when it started. And um, it's, I mean, part of it was personal. My parents live on West Dry Creek. It was really rather close. They were supposed to evacuate. They did not because I'm telling the audience how stubborn they are. Now everybody knows.
they weren't alone. I know that.
They were not alone. When the
Yeah.
sheriff got to their door, he was like, "Okay, bye. Like, it's
Uh,
fine. Do what you want." But their cars were packed and ready. From a personal standpoint, of course, that's always, I mean, I know they could just, they wouldn't have left. They would have left if they,
Right, right.
like whatever. Um, but also just from my, like our own house and our family, it wasn't anywhere near it, but it was just very, it was just very like, oh my God, we're just not prepared for this at all. Like we don't have this experience. Like we need to get our stuff together,
Yeah,
not this time, but just moving forward. From a wineries, and just the Dry Creek Valley in general, like listen, at that point, it's like very much out of your hands, right? It's like,
yeah,
it is what it is. I think for this particular experience, even from the very beginning, the buzz was that how incredibly organized and how much support Cal Fire had. And they attacked us very differently than they had in the past from just like an amount of bodies and strategy.
yeah,
So at that point, you're just like, let those people do their work. The when the winds shifted and we started seeing that there, like the next morning on that Monday, and we were seeing that it wasn't, traveling like actually past into the valley.
yeah,
The next step was connecting with the local chambers and whatnot, just to have the same narrative of what was
right.
going on. It's one of those things, even though this is my first fire, we know that any sort of tragedy or incidences like this can very quickly damage tourism, and like
Yeah,
our people were saying Healdsburg's on fire and like all the wineries are burning down, which was not the case at all. So my job really that Monday was right away to make sure the narrative was, everyone had the same one, that none of the wineries were affected. Obviously no one was injured.
yeah,
Because those journalists, we love the news, but they are out for it. They want the drama.
yeah. No, I mean, it's all about it's what's the word I'm looking for? Sensationalizing things, right? So it's
Absolutely.
like Dry Creek Valley's burning down. Like, wait, no, it's not. Like, don't cancel your trip.
No, no.
We're
I
open.
mean, even the event we had with Outstanding in the Field last weekend, there was a lot of people that it was, this dinner for 150 people in the heart of Dry Creek Valley at Dry Creek Peach. We poured Dry Creek Valley wine, and there were some of the guests that reached out to the event planner for it, asking about the air quality.
Yeah,
Was everything okay? I mean, and this had been plus 2 weeks of time that had passed, so it's definitely like mis sort of it's just like misinformation, and people just don't necessarily know
yeah,
like how long does the smoke last? Is it bad for you? Is it gonna, I think one of the big things that we were clearing up that I had a chance to talk to a lot of growers about right away was smoke taint and the fact that the grapes were so young, it wasn't affecting them.
right.
So for me, it was also just a lot of learnings of like how to,
Yeah,
again, just be in general that voice. But it's, I mean, certainly like, you know, the people that live there and everything they know the drill.
yeah.
They've lived there for a while.
Well, I thought you did a really good job with that, and it's a trippy thing because you literally have no control, right? So
Right.
you got these guys that are at the Cal Fire guys are obviously fantastic, but they are also at the whim of the wind,
Totally.
and it's just kind of a powerless, kind of a powerless feeling sometimes when that's going on. So I did think you did a really good job. But let's switch gears for a second. So outstanding in the field, just another event that's another collaboration, I guess, is something that you want to tell
That's
me a little
another
bit about that.
collaboration that we just recently did last weekend. It's a concept, a dinner concept essentially that started in I think 1999 is when
Wow.
Jim started it, and it's really this idea of like let's sit at a table and just like bring a community together, and sort of bringing the idea of like the earth and the land, and like they were hyper local before hyper local was a concept.
Right.
And they've just built this absolutely beautiful brand for themselves, this incredible following. I used to go to their dinners all the time when they came to New York. They always try to do them in these wow, unique locations that you would never typically have a seated dinner at. So
Yeah.
in New York City, for example, a couple of them that I attended was, rooftop farms in the middle of Brooklyn, or, things like that. Or um,
Do they
they
bring their own chef in, or do
they
they?
bring in, try to work with a local chef as much as
Okay.
possible, or a chef that they've worked with before that makes sense for that particular, concept or product. And just the thought, I mean, I cold called them basically. That's the
Oh, you
perfect
did?
example where
Okay.
I mean, cold emailed them.
Okay.
And
Cool.
I said how much I love them. I had already spoken to Gail, who's the owner of Dry Creek Peach. I wanted it to be in a location that wasn't a winery, back to the idea of keeping things fair and holistic.
Yeah.
How do we collaborate with our neighbors and bring these 150 plus individuals into place and be able to find a way to share more than just one wine?
Yeah.
Um, and so I had spoken to Gail already, and she said, okay, let's figure it out if it's possible. Reach out to Outstanding in the Field, and then kept it moving, kept being like, hello, it's me again. Let's find a place. And we ended up doing a blind tasting with some incredible local somms and wine and beverage directors here in Healdsburg. And all of our member wineries were welcome to give one wine for this tasting. We ended up having 47, which is
Wow.
pretty great to compare to about 65 wineries that we now have as
How
members.
many got chosen out of the 47 or
We only picked 4.
wow, that's a tough one.
And it was just a great opportunity. And it was brand new, lovely humans that came to Dry Creek Valley. Most of them were for San Francisco. These ticket prices they're not cheap. It was $385 per
Yeah.
ticket.
Yeah.
And they just had this incredible, non-fussy experience, right? It's
Right.
nothing that's like, there's not like flamethrowers there. It's something
Right.
that feels so authentic. The food is, again, like the chef's friend had went to catch the halibut that morning,
Yeah.
on the coast. Like it's this particular type of human that we think just that brand of people is right
Yeah.
for the valley. And so let's collaborate more with those kind of organizations.
So is this something that will come back, or is it like, no, that once they go somewhere, they never come
Usually
back?
they don't love to necessarily redo the same location.
Yeah.
So I think, we now have this great relationship with them. And I think it's just a matter of like, keep it going and maybe find another spot and do it again next year. Find maybe another secret location or
Yeah.
potentially a grower's property that's not public, that's very unique. So there's definitely some opportunities, but it's definitely not a like, a contract or like every year
Right.
we're doing this now.
Well, I just think that's so great because I think that you can't communicate how beautiful Dry Creek Valley is in the evening with the greatest photographer or videographer coupled with the greatest, right? It's like it does not, you can't do it, right? But when you come into the valley and you're having some great wines made here, when the sun's going down, they're surrounded by, I mean, it's just like is nothing better than that.
No, I mean, it fills your heart and fills your cup in a way that, even us being so dialed into this event and knowing exactly what was going on, it
Yeah.
still had all of the magic that night. I mean, even, I know this is silly, but we talk a lot about the reason the grapes are so special here and they grow so well is obviously these cool nights, warm days. And even
Yeah.
that, as just a human having this experience of it was so hot when it started this event at 4 o'clock. Like people were just like, you know, they're hot.
Yeah.
And by the
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
they sit for dinner and the sun sets, all of a sudden you get that drop of 10, 15, 20 degrees.
Yeah.
And it's just this, it's just like this new level of like, just, I don't know, almost just like instinct excitement of like where you are.
You get it. It's like an aha moment. You kind of go, oh,
Mhm.
okay, I get it. I see what's going on here.
Yeah.
I can't let you go without having you talk a little about Passport Weekend
Yeah.
and what that means to Dry Creek Valley, to the wineries, to the growers, to the people that attend. So talk a little about Passport.
Yeah, I mean, Passport is now going to be for 2025 will be on its 34th year.
Wow.
So it's been around for quite a while. The concept originally was let's open up Dry Creek Valley as this open house. It's had that for all of these years, essentially, through being this like huge party where there was, 6,000 plus people descended on this little valley, partying all weekend, to getting through COVID, to now being somewhat more reined in about having this experience of getting to still having the open house, but really being able to bring people together from all over, and not being under a tent in the traditional tasting sense where you get to really hop around, you make your own adventure, you decide, based on the participating wineries where you want to go, what kind of food you want to eat, what kind of people you want to hang out with. And it's really unique in that sense because you get to really taste and experience Dry Creek Valley, in sort of this little condensed environment that you wouldn't normally do. So whether, again, you're a local or you're traveling from, Arizona or whatever it might be, it's pretty unique in that sense that you get almost like a little bit of a flavor of, all these different wineries, most of them that are still family owned, multi-generational. You are a part of something really special in this little area.
I think it's cool too. It's a chance for the wineries to express themselves and their personalities, and for the attendees to experience that. So, some are going to, some are maybe a little more traditional and a little more formal, and some are very informal. But the common thread for me is they all take great pride in being a Dry Creek producer. They take great pride in hosting those folks that attend. And even though, obviously, there's a certain bit of competition, right? Because we all compete for a spot on a wine list or a spot on the shelf. There's a lot of camaraderie about working together to bring people to Dry Creek Valley, and knowing that once they experience it, I've never talked to anybody who goes, I was in Dry Creek, I was kind of a little underwhelmed. I've never heard that.
No,
no one has ever said that, right? They're like, oh my God, it's awesome. I didn't have time to go see all the people I wanted to see. And that's what you hear. And that's why I think it's so important to do the things that you guys have been doing to just continue to bring people here, because there's a lot of competition out there. I mean, other regions.
Absolutely. And it's, like you said, one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle here is just to get people here. Because even if, we hope you drink wine and we hope you buy wine, but I have to say, even if you were just to drive the 16 miles, down Dry Creek Road, it will do your soul well.
Well, I think
it's a really special place.
I think that is a perfect way to wrap up today's conversation. And I love you, man. I think you're great. I think you're doing a great job. I've really enjoyed the time that we got to spend together. I think Dry Creek Valley's lucky to have you and Amanda, of course, doing the hard work that you're doing. And I hope you stick around for a long time. And you don't want to be pulling the kids out of school, right? So you want to you got to probably stay put here for, at least another 14 or 15 years. But no, real seriously, thank you for taking the time to be with me today. And
thank you, George. And you've been like this incredible wealth of knowledge. And I don't know, I feel so lucky, again, between you and the rest of our board and our community, just to have this, giving us a chance. And we had a chance to, for many reasons, to sort of turn over the page and be able to be ahead of the game and stay relevant and find ways to sort of, again, rebrand and be transparent and genuine with the community. And everyone has just been nothing but kind, but also honest, and is willing to give us the feedback because they know we can take it. And that's the only way we're going to grow. Well, I think everything you're doing is working, and I expect, more of the same and great things for Dry Creek Valley. So thanks again. Thank you, George. Thanks for having me. You're welcome.